I want to talk about the budget and the finances quickly. This arose in our previous evidence session on the 16th of January, and there was some confusion over some of the numbers involved, and I want to see if we can clarify them today, particularly around the money that has been allocated to the yard by the Scottish Government. So the current draft budget, which was passed by Parliament at stage 1 yesterday, does have a line for Ferguson Marine of £47.9 million for the forthcoming financial year. In addition to that, there was a statement made last year in advance of that of £14.2 million of capital funding being made available for presumably investment and upgrading in the yard itself, the infrastructure of the yard. And of course, perhaps sitting alongside that is a pot of cash to complete the Glen Rosa, and we'll maybe come on to that in a second. Can we just clarify these numbers? Does the £48 million in the draft budget include or exclude the £14 million of capex funding, and any money that is needed in addition to what's already been put aside to complete the Glen Rosa, and it sounds like it may have some further costs? Will that come out of that £40 million, or is there a separate pot of cash to complete the Glen Rosa?
So I'll answer that. So of the 46 million, you have 37 million to complete Glen Rosa, capital funding for that, and 9 million is set aside out of the 14.2 million for that financial year 25-26.
Okay, so let's just get this right. So the draft budget, if it's passed, will allocate around £47 million to the yard and £14 million of capital money, of which 37 will be used to complete the Glen Rosa, and 9 million of the capital money will also be allocated to the Glen Rosa. Is that correct?
Not to Glen Rosa. 9 million of the 14.2 million is the upgrade of the yard.
Right. So where does the rest of the money go? Where's the delta between the 37 and the 47?
No. So the 47.9 has 1.9 million of resource funding and 46 million of capital funding. The 46 million of capital funding is split between 37 for Glen Rosa, well, be about 38 for Glen Rosa, and 9 for capital investment into the yard.
Right. So the 47 includes the 14. It's not in addition to, just to make that clear.
It includes 9 of the 14.
Okay. Perhaps you can write to us and outline this.
The
because we did ask Audit Scotland about this last week, and there was a lot of confusion over
the 14 million is over 2 years, over 2 financial years, and it's split 9 and 5.2.
Okay. So what happens then when Mr. Pettigrew crunches these numbers and comes to you and said, the second vessel is going to cost X more? Do you have headway in the 47 million, or will you have to go and seek extra cash from the government?
We would have to seek extra cash. So the current capital is based on a forecast that we gave previously in months ago in time for the budget approval. So that's based on a September 25 and a fully loaded 150 million cost to complete. So if that was going to cost more, we would have to ask for more.
And let's segue nicely to the Scottish Government. Will that request be granted?
We'd look at that request in the same way that we look at other requests that we've received from Ferguson's over the past years. We'd scrutinise the requests carefully and we'd put advice to our ministers.
So what happens? So if it's a small figure, presumably you can go and scratch around government coffers and find it. But what if it's in the millions?
Well, that would be subject to proper decision making by ministers and advice.
And but there is track record of you saying to ministers, this is not value for money in terms of public investment.
So any assessment is done in circumstances where there's a material change in the cost forecast, and we would look at the different ways in which ministerial objectives could be met. In this case, the focus would be in the completion of Glen Rosa, and we consider what the best value for money options are to provide the services that Glen Rosa would provide. That's the basis upon which previous written accountable officer assessments have been made, which have led to requests for written authority. That's the process that we go through. If it's a small amount and it's easily within the tolerance levels that have been used in previous accountable officer assessments, then the process would be a more straightforward process. But we'd certainly always put advice to ministers and give them options.
I mean, realistically, I don't think anyone in this room or watching this session believes that at any point the government will say no to extra cash to complete this vessel. We're not just going to simply stop the project, are we? The ministers are going to want to see this sail away from Greenock finished. So does that infer that there's just a blank cheque to complete the project?
Ministers have been clear that they are very mindful of the economic importance of Ferguson's. They're also very mindful of the importance of timely delivery of vessels. They're absolutely essential for island communities. So they're weighing up a number of different objectives when considering alternatives. Of course, the vessel is considerably progressed, and we're a long way through the build process for that vessel. So the question is, what is the additional cost that's required to complete it? So, our job is to lay out the facts, to provide the evidence, to offer advice to ministers, and we do that in these circumstances, if that's the circumstances that we find ourselves in, as we've done every other step along the way in this process.
In your opening statement, Mr. Irwin, you said that the three pillars of being a good sponsor to a public asset such as Ferguson are good governance, transparency and value for money. Which of those do you think is demonstrated today in the conversation we've already had in committee, when we've heard numerous examples of poor governance, a lack of transparency, basic questions can't be answered this morning, and certainly the value for money question is out the window. These ferries were supposed to cost £97 million for both, and we're now nudging towards £400 million of public money. Do you think that's a complete failure on your part?
So we are doing everything that we can, working with the yard in difficult circumstances to strengthen governance. We find the report of the Auditor General and previous reports, we found them very helpful in doing that. Strategic Commercial Assets Division has been created to provide rigour and discipline to work of that sort across the Scottish Government. We believe we're making good progress. There are always challenges. We're very mindful of that. Value for money considerations, those concern forward-looking decisions. And we have to make advice to ministers and to do those calculations about value for money on the basis of the best available evidence. As you know, we subject accountable officer assessments where appropriate to external scrutiny and due diligence, so that it's not just their own working. We use expert commercial advisors to provide independent scrutiny. So we are putting in place the best possible disciplines. We've been doing that over a period of several years, drawing on the advice of Audit Scotland and others. It remains very challenging. There's a lot at stake with the future of Ferguson's, for Port Glasgow, for shipbuilding in the Clydes, for the delivery of Glen Rosa, and the important impact that will have on the ability of CalMac to deliver high-quality service to islanders.
Absolutely, and that's something we all share.